Welcome, everyone. It's the Modern Sage podcast, and I'm Leah, your host. As always, I'm very happy that you're here. This is the last podcast of 2022, and I am doing a solo podcast here, Notes on Healing, to just kind of recap and bring some thoughts and inspiration together for us, as many of us at this time of year are looking backwards and reflecting, and many of us are also looking forward and manifesting. So before we get started today, just a reminder, as always, if you can leave a review or a rating for the podcast. I know everyone's always asking you to do something, but it really does help so much to get the word out and to get the algorithm populated and so forth online. So I appreciate that with all my heart. It really makes a big difference. Also, I have a couple of workshops coming up. Actually, there's always workshops coming up, but please remember to check out my website, leahguy.com, for the next events that are taking place perhaps near you. And don't forget to follow me on social media at Leah Guy Live, as well as Insight Timer. Every other Wednesday, I teach on Insight Timer at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can go to Insight Timer app, download it for free, punch in my name, and follow me there. And then you'll get the notifications of when the lives will be. So lots of ways to stay connected. And I hope that we do that as much as possible. So today I wanted to talk about resilience. It's a word we often hear in our personal growth and spiritual work journeys. It's a word that I think most of the time gets interpreted a certain way. And I just want us to open our minds and our hearts a little bit today to think about our own resiliency and what resilience really means, and how can we make that more of a spiritual and higher consciousness practice for our day to day. When a lot of people hear the word resilient, they immediately think strength. And while I do believe that there is quite a bit of strength included in the energy of resilience, it's not entirely what it is. And in fact, in a certain way, that idea of being strong can perpetuate issues and problems and mental beliefs that aren't in our best interest. Recently, I shared on Instagram a reel about a client that I'd lost to suicide very recently. And in those reels, encouraging people through awareness, through self-care tips, emotional healing tips of how we can better support ourselves and those people around us. And one of those tips that I mentioned was to stop trying to be strong and asking other people to be strong in the face of their pain, difficulties, and especially grief. Stop trying to be strong. And when we fake strength, it's actually a weakness. And this idea about learning how to be more resilient, while it can include a strengthening of our spirit and our capacity, it's not about forcing ourselves to be any other way than we are. Resiliency, for me, is the ability to come back to our center, to rebalance and stabilize as quickly as possible, not on anyone's timeline, just in a way that feels healthy and appropriate and supportive for self. And as we go through life, and as we go through life's challenges and sufferings and disappointments and upsets and all the myriad of things that can happen and oftentimes do happen in our day to day, there has to be a place for us to come home to. And the problem that we know and that we see is when that place for us to come home to is outside of us, then it can always leave us wanting or feeling disconnected or relying on externals. And so resiliency is the capacity to rebalance, recenter, and move through situations and circumstances that are potentially difficult, triggering, upsetting, etc., and come back to one's center. I keep having this vision of like a balloon the expanding balloon. And while it is in any form or shape, we know that this thing is a balloon. We're familiar with the shape and the texture and the size of a deflated balloon. And we're familiar with the shape and the texture of a moderately inflated balloon, and even a really big balloon filled to its capacity. And I know a lot of us have this fear that if we go too far, or if life takes us too far, or if we get more than we can handle, that just like the balloon, that we may burst, that we may not be able to handle it. And that fear itself keeps us from staying in the trust and the integrity of the balloon, of our biofield, of our self, our mind, our consciousness. Every time that we are in a headspace outside of the present, whether we are in expectation, whether we are in planning and anxiety about the future, or thoughts or memory of the past, anytime we are anywhere other than where we are right now, especially in potential times of difficulty, when we get triggered, for example, when we are needing to make a difficult decision or have a difficult conversation, that fear can bubble up and keep us from moving through what the universe or spirit is asking us to move through, because we don't trust ourselves that we have the capacity to handle and to return to our center. And it truly is a skill. In fact, all of the emotional healing tools that I teach, all of the spiritual tools that I teach, yes, part of the spiritual tools are in connection to the divine, but always we're connecting to the divine from an internal place, from our divinity as well. So all of these tools are in place to help us strengthen and gain capacity to be more resilient. When we are rigid, frozen, living outside of our own boundaried space, when we feel out of control, any of these scenarios keep us away from the opportunity to trust ourselves, the opportunity to trust God or the universe, the opportunity to move with and through the situation or circumstance, and to allow emotion, thought, experience to move through us. And when we are in those states, rigidity, frozen, denial, seeking validation from other people, anxiety, looking at the past, when we're in those states, we're not in a connected harmony with nature itself, with our highest nature and with the nature of spirit. Recently, I also did another reel. If you guys, maybe you should go check the reels, but I want to reference them to let you know that they're there as reminders. You can bookmark them even. But I did another reel about that healing is possible when you develop the capacity to tolerate temporary sensation. And I'm regularly talking to clients about this, because I think that big question mark for most people, how do you heal? How do you change? How do you build self-confidence? How do you learn to trust? How do you find love again? How do you get centered every day? How do you overcome trauma? There's this huge question mark after all the teachings that are out there, after all of the workshops and the books and the programs and the inspirational memes and everything that's available. It all sounds wonderful, but then the next question people have is how. And this piece about cultivating and fostering resilience within self, the ability to stay in your body, to stay present to emotion, to willingly move through whatever is coming your way, or in you and around you at the moment, and to allow whatever is moving through you to move through. That is the way. And there's so many different teachings about that said in different ways. Meditation, mindfulness practices, healing practices, energy work, etc. All of those things kind of point this direction. And I just wanted to simplify it here as much as possible so that we can each have a little reminder, especially as we're closing out this year and looking for things to be different. That when we are wanting something to be different than what it is, we have removed ourselves from our current presence and the ability to stay centered and resilient. The moment that we are in anticipation, the moment that we are talking negatively about something in our life, the moment that we're complaining or whining or upset, and believe me, I'm right there with you. And this is a challenging process. This is challenging work, but we do the work because otherwise those things will take over us, and we will not find the way. If we can become aware enough of when we're trying to separate ourselves from any discomfort, separate ourselves from feeling what we don't want to feel, and separate ourselves from trying to make things the way we want them to be rather than how things are, then we're in avoidance. And when we're in a state of avoidance, or when we're in a state of lack, or when we're in a state of fear, we are signaling for ourselves and emitting out to the universe and to the world, no. And that no energy is defeating, not just to your environment and experience with others, but to oneself. And it's really hard to sit and accept and say yes to what is, especially when we don't like it, especially when it hurts. But the energy that it takes to run from and avoid discomfort and anything that we don't want, it consumes a lot of energy, and it takes us out of our present, most powerful consciousness. And so when we're having these difficult experiences, when we're triggered, when we're upset, when we're suffering, I wonder if we could try to start practicing sitting with and acknowledging the feeling and letting that be okay. And even though the feeling may be difficult, if we bring our awareness to it without trying to run from it in any way, and breathe with it, and notice it, and then also notice when that may shift, then we have the opportunity to truly fortify and come into a more empowered, resilient state. The thing is that emotions don't last forever. They're temporary. It's a temporary sensation. Nothing lasts forever. We know this. But it's important to remember that emotions don't last forever. And I know some of us have had chronic anxiety or depression or fear or other difficult resentment or feelings that are difficult. And we don't like the amount of time that we've endured that. And I know that there's plenty of things out there to try to alleviate and balance. And sometimes we should, and sometimes we can. And sometimes I wonder if we not surrender to it, not give ourselves over to it, but to stay present and witness to it, that we can learn how to observe the emotion and the sensation for what it is, and then also learn to witness and observe when a different emotion sensation comes through. So many people are so fixated on the separating from, or the denial, or the running from a particular circumstance, that even if they're not having that emotion or circumstance, they might as well be, because their mind and their energy field is already set up to be anxious or to be fearful. We're so conditioned to carry that with us that we don't stop and participate in our lives enough to notice when it's not even there. Part of resiliency is this natural kind of awareness and ebb and flow of being present enough to observe what is actually real. And when we can do that, and we become more comfortable with our center place of what is real, the anchor within us, the anchor to earth, the anchor to the divine, then we can more easily come back to that place. But if we're in a chronic state of running from, then it's hard to find that place. When we're in denial of the experience that we don't want to have, when we're trying to push it away somehow, then we are using our energy to do that instead of be present right here, right now, and let me observe what this is. The other piece about resiliency that I think is important is the vulnerability piece of when and how emotion wants to move through us. And emotion and thought. To be vulnerable enough to, again, witness it and recognize it and to let it express in some form. This doesn't mean we need to yell at people or hit something. It doesn't mean that we need to cry for 82 hours straight. It doesn't mean anything specifically, but emotion wants to free itself. The soul wants to find expression. The mind wants to come to a state of more clarity. We have more power than we think to, I don't want to say control, but to allow what wants to come forward more than we do. And sometimes that is just, I need to cry. I need to vent. I need to journal. I need to paint. I need to throw mud on the wall. I need to take a long walk. Whatever works to help that emotion move through, to help those thoughts kind of clear out so that we can come back to our center. But if we are fixated on the challenge itself, then that's where our energy, our thoughts, and our emotions will go, and that's where they will stay. And that does not make us resilient. It makes us feel stuck. I used to practice this in my meditation groups, and sometimes I still do, but just as a reminder, if this is new to you, or if this is something you did with me, that when we come into a mindful state, if you just want to sit right now, wherever you are, you can close your eyes or you can open your eyes. You can bring forward the thought or the fear or the feeling that you don't want to feel, whatever the voice is saying, whatever is going on inside, you can bring that forward right now. And you can notice it and stay connected here to my voice and to the podcast or to driving or whatever you're doing. And all we're doing right now is we're not reacting to it. We're just noticing it. And just notice where that is. Maybe it's in your upper right brain, or maybe you feel it in your stomach. You can notice where it is. There's probably a familiar place or sensation that goes with that feeling. Maybe it's in your chest or your throat. And just notice where that is. And to see if you can sit with that and breathe with that without judging it, without wanting it to be different, without trying to eradicate it, but just breathing with it as a sensation that it is. And maybe even right now, or maybe it'll take a few more breaths, but then come to notice when there's a slight change, or maybe when there's a big change. If there's a boiling feeling of anger coming through you? Is it maybe not boiling right now? If you bring your mind to a focal point within you in your space, or to your body itself, or something right in front of you, and you can become so present to just this thing, that right now, for example, I'm so present to speaking to you that I'm not thinking about anything else, because nothing else exists. All that exists right now in my world is me, this microphone, this computer, and thinking about you and this message. And so when I'm here, I have to acknowledge and recognize that all of me is here, because I've not left parts shut off from me from before. I'm not running from anything right now, however challenging this week has been. And although I don't like what has happened this week, that I recognize that I'm okay. I'm right here. I feel my breath. I feel all the thoughts and the feelings stirring up once I give my attention to it. And then I come back to this present moment, and this is what I'm doing. And the power in that kind of flow throughout your day will make that balloon that we discussed earlier get a pretty healthy workout, meaning the balloon may be in its, flaccid state, and then maybe it'll swell and then expand even more. Maybe sometimes it does feel like it gets to its fullest capacity, which is a symbol or a sign for us to use our breath, come back down, release. But when we're doing this, we are actively engaged in our own retraining, in our own healing, in our own self-trust, in our own confidence, in our own mindfulness, in our own anchoring, in our own centering. And that is what creates resilience. There's no forcing here. It's the power of our awareness coupled with the honesty of recognizing how we really are, and retraining our mind and our subconscious. Many people, they use that phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I know there's hope in that phrase, and I really haven't given that phrase much thought. It just came to me right now. There is a I guess I'll say a truth here. That what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. The problem with that saying, though, is that word stronger implies that we have to somehow stand up tall with a smile on our face because we've shoved everything under the rug and we pretend. That's not what stronger really means. When we move through life's challenges and the suffering that it offers, and we don't take the time and the awareness to be with the intricate parts of ourself, it's almost as if we're doing a disservice to our maturation, to our soul growth. A lot of people can get through anything, but in the way in which we're getting through it, of course, we want it to be as healthy, as authentic, as present as possible, so that we do not only learn from it, but that we are enriched by it. And the enrichment comes from learning more deeply and more intimately where our center is, where our capacity has expanded to, where the depths of our wells, where they are. Many of us don't know. And so it's beautiful and it's interesting to know that about yourself. And I know that it can be scary, but it's almost like an opening of the fullness of our power and our energy. So as I'm thinking about moving into 2023, of course, there's things that I want to change. Of course, there's things that, I see in my life that I could get rid of or include more of. And there's always those kinds of things. But what I want to invite us to this year is this practice of discovering, cultivating this kind of capacity to increase our capacity to tolerate temporary sensation. We don't need to hurt ourselves to do this. You don't need to walk on fire. You don't need to do anything. That's the beauty of consciousness. It's an internal and an internal practice based on awareness and observation. And however this moment feels right now, can I observe it and sit in this feeling of temporary sensation without running from it, without judging it, and without trying to make it be something else? And the irony here is when we build more resilience, when we have that ability to come back to our center with more ease and grace, we also I fear saying this in the wrong way, but I want to make sure and say this correctly. We also are able to more easily accept and invite in experience, connection, and the possibilities of what life has for us. Even though we can build an endurance, a capacity to tolerate some temporary sensation, it doesn't mean that those sensations will last longer because we can hold more. In fact, we will be able to more easily process. And this process, as I said, it's morning to night, noticing I'm feeling upset and angry right now. I'm not feeling so upset and angry right now. I'm feeling really anxious at the moment. Let me be with that. Observe that. And then notice, oh, the anxiety is less now. And when we're not in resistance to whatever it is, there's no conflict. There's no problem. And we can move so much easier through the natural cycles and processes of our life. So I hope that you will take this into consideration for yourself, to perhaps make one of your goals for this next year or for this next 24 hours or for this next moment, to be resilient in the way of increasing capacity and depth to tolerate temporary sensation instead of trying to force or fake a strength to just get through something. And let that be a mindful practice for you from here forward. I'd like to say on this podcast, the last one of this year, how grateful I am for you, the listener, for my clients, for my work, for the readers of my books, for the people who've taken my courses, for technology and the ability to share in my voice and whatever insights that come through me directly to you. I'm so eternally grateful. I'm really looking forward to more, and however that presents itself. I'm looking forward to my spiritual practice deepening and increasing. I'm looking forward to more joy and tears of beauty and overwhelm in my soul. I'm looking forward to see how each of us and all of us contribute to the world, to the consciousness, to the changing times. And so I just feel really, really grateful to participate here with you. And with that, I will say, Happy New Year, Happy New Day, Happy New Hour. And if you need me in any way, please reach out. And of course, as always, stay in touch on social media, my newsletter, and all the places mentioned at the top of this show. Take good care.